Just 15 minutes to catch fireflies. Then I'll be back." That's what she said, with a voice as bright and innocent as the Arkansas twilight. No one imagined it would be the last thing Morgan Nick ever told her mother. Moments later, the little girl would vanish behind the sandy dunes, her silhouette swallowed by dusk, her laughter cut short, leaving only silence and a chilling sense of absence. The only thing left behind? A fleeting glimpse of an old red pickup truck with an unusually low camper top, creeping away from the parking lot, its engine rumbling into the distance. Some say they saw the taillights flicker as the vehicle disappeared, the desert air heavy with secrets. And just like that, a normal summer night in the quiet town of Alma was shattered, replaced by fear, confusion, and 100 unanswered questions. How does a child simply vanish in a matter of minutes, with her friends and mother just steps away? If it was an abduction, why choose such a public place during a community baseball game? For those who remember that evening, the memory plays like a broken film reel. Kids running in the sand, fireflies blinking over the field, the sharp crack of a bat. Then, a missing child, and a red truck that would haunt their dreams for decades. It would be years before anyone would understand what truly happened after Morgan's last words. In the aftermath, time seemed to freeze. The world moved on, but in Alma, Arkansas, nothing would ever be the same. Was it just bad luck? A crime of opportunity? Or was someone watching, waiting for the perfect moment? And if so, could anyone have stopped it? To understand the weight of this loss, we have to step back, before the searchlights, before the endless flyers and news stories. Morgan Nick was just 6 years old at the time of her disappearance. Like any child her age, she had dreams that soared beyond the small town of Alma. Morgan was a proud Girl Scout, and she loved animals so much that she would tell anyone who would listen that she wanted to become a veterinarian one day. Her room was filled with stuffed animals, and she was known for rescuing strays, no matter how scruffy they looked. But life at home was far from perfect. Morgan's parents had divorced, but the split hadn't torn the family apart. In fact, it seemed to make them even closer. Morgan's mother, Colleen, worked hard to give her daughter as normal a childhood as possible, filling their days with laughter, Girl Scout meetings, and dreams for the future. Weekends were spent together, camping, going to the park, and, on that fateful night, watching a Little League baseball game under the big Arkansas sky. It was supposed to be a simple evening, one that had happened 100 times before. The ballpark was a community hub, a place where families gathered and children roamed freely, chasing each other in the fading sunlight. The sense of safety was almost tangible, a warm blanket wrapped around the town. Yet, as investigators would later reflect, sometimes the most ordinary places hide the deepest dangers. What no one realized then was that Alma, with its quiet streets and close-knit community, was not immune to tragedy. Morgan was the kind of child everyone noticed, bright, curious, and quick to make friends. Maybe that's why her disappearance struck such a deep chord, not just with her family, but with the entire state of Arkansas. When Morgan vanished, it was as if a piece of the town's innocence vanished with her. Why would anyone target a girl like Morgan? Was it simply a crime of opportunity, or was there something more chilling at play? Sometimes, tragedies announce themselves with whispers rather than sirens. In the days and hours before Morgan vanished, subtle warnings echoed across Alma. But were they heard in time? That evening, as families gathered at the ballpark and the sun dipped behind the Arkansas hills, A sense of safety seemed almost absolute. Yet, scattered throughout the surrounding neighborhoods, a disturbing pattern had begun to emerge. Several local children reported being approached by a bearded man with a country accent. He was persistent, coaxing them toward his old red pickup truck, sometimes offering treats, sometimes just asking for help. The stories varied, but the pattern was the same. A stranger, a red truck, and an uncomfortable feeling that lingered long after he drove away. Parents would later recall feeling uneasy. Some brushed off the warnings as childish exaggerations, the kind of stories that pop up every summer. Others reported the incidents to police, but with no concrete evidence and only vague descriptions. There was little for officers to do. No crime had been committed, after all. That night, however, the warnings turned real. Morgan was playing with friends near the edge of the parking lot, shaking the sand out of her shoes after chasing fireflies. Her friends would later tell investigators about the strange man they saw by the red pickup, a man with a weathered face and a low white camper shell attached to the truck. He lingered at the edge of the ballpark, just close enough to watch, but far enough to remain a shadow in the night. Within minutes, everything changed. Morgan's friends returned to the bleachers, expecting to see her following behind. But she was gone. The red pickup, once just a worrying rumor, became the centerpiece of every parent's worst nightmare. Was this man an opportunist, simply waiting for the right moment? Or had he planned everything down to the last detail? And could something more have been done to stop him before it was too late? June 9th, 1995. The night air in Alma, Arkansas was thick with the buzz of summer. Families gathered for baseball, children laughing in the fading light. Morgan Nick, just 6 years old, was among them, her hair glinting gold under the stadium lights. By all accounts, it was a perfect evening, until it wasn't. Around 9:00 p.m., Morgan asked her mother for permission to catch fireflies with her friends just beyond the outfield fence. It seemed harmless. Colleen, her mother, hesitated for a moment, but ultimately agreed. She could still see Morgan from the stands, and the parking lot was bustling with people. For about 15 minutes, the children played, chasing sparks of light through the tall grass. Then, as the game ended and families started heading for their cars, Morgan stopped by the parking lot to empty the sand from her shoes. That's when the timeline splits. One friend watched as a man with a bushy beard stood near an old red pickup truck, a camper top sitting unusually low on the bed. The man said nothing, just watched. Another friend called Morgan to hurry, but when they turned back, Morgan was gone. In the span of minutes, perhaps less, she'd vanished. There was no scream, no sound of struggle, only a suffocating silence and the faint rumble of a truck engine leaving the lot. Panic spread quickly. Within 6 minutes, police were on the scene. Officers cordoned off the area and launched a massive search. Volunteers flooded the fields with flashlights, calling Morgan's name into the darkness. Every parent clutched their child a little tighter. Every detail, every car, every stranger suddenly felt suspicious. As hours turned into days, the reality settled in. Morgan was gone, and the only clue was that mysterious red pickup, now just another set of tire tracks in the sand. How could a child disappear so quickly in a place surrounded by friends, family, and light? The search for Morgan Nick began with a surge of hope and quickly collided with a wall of uncertainty. Within hours of her disappearance, Alma transformed. Ordinary citizens became searchers, fields turned into grids, and the quiet, familiar landscape was crisscrossed by flashlight beams and shouted names. The police, aided by hundreds of volunteers, left no stone unturned. Helicopters circled overhead. Bloodhounds traced the air, searching for any trace of the little girl. The focus quickly narrowed to a single, chilling clue: the red pickup truck with the low, white camper top. Dozens of tips poured in. People across Arkansas claimed to have seen the vehicle, sometimes just minutes after Morgan vanished, sometimes in distant counties, sometimes in broad daylight or in the early morning fog. Each report brought a flicker of hope. Could Morgan still be nearby? Was the driver moving her from town to town, just ahead of the searchers? But hope is a double-edged sword. Every lead investigated seemed to end the same way: a false alarm, a look-alike vehicle, another dead end. The investigation stretched on for years, growing colder with each season. Detectives worked through stacks of notes and recordings, cataloging every call and every conversation. From 2001 to 2019, there were repeated waves of renewed interest. New, secret tips surfaced, leading to dramatic searches, even excavation of suspected burial sites. Yet time and again, the sand slipped through their fingers. The red truck was traced through a series of owners, but nothing solid emerged. The case, at times, seemed to slip into silence, a shadow flickering at the edge of memory. Through it all, Morgan's family never gave up. Colleen Nick, her mother, became a relentless advocate, refusing to let the world forget her daughter's face. Still, the question lingered. Was the truth buried somewhere close to, or had the evidence vanished into the night along with Morgan? For decades, Morgan Nick's disappearance loomed over Alma like an unending storm. Each year brought new rumors, new heartache, and new disappointments. The case files thickened, but answers remained just out of reach. The red pickup, so often glimpsed, so rarely caught, became almost mythical, a symbol of lost hope. But then, nearly 30 years after that summer night, science stepped in where memory could not. In 2021, after a massive review of the case, Arkansas authorities announced a new development. They had named a primary suspect. Billy Leon Lindsay, known as Lynx, was a career criminal with a long, violent record. Lindsay had died back in 2000, but his shadow stretched far and wide. He'd owned a red pickup that matched witness descriptions, and he'd spent years drifting between small towns, often brushing up against trouble. Still, naming him was not enough. What investigators needed was proof, something that would finally connect Morgan to Lindsay and his truck. That proof came from an unlikely source: the truck itself, passed down through a string of owners and gathering dust. Forensic teams searched every inch of the vehicle, determined to find something the years hadn't erased. What they found were a few strands of hair, buried deep in the bed of the truck. Advanced DNA testing compared these samples to Morgan's mother. The result was clear: a first-degree biological relationship. Statistically, it meant Morgan herself had almost certainly been inside that truck. With this discovery, the decades-old mystery shifted. The evidence, silent for so long, finally spoke. The truck, an object unchanged by time, became the key, the black box holding secrets the world had almost given up on. And for the first time, Morgan's family and her town could see the faint outline of truth emerging from the darkness. But justice, it seemed, would remain just out of reach. The suspect was dead. There would be no arrest, no trial. Only a hard-won answer, and the hope that, at last, Morgan's story would not be forgotten. October the 1st, 2024, after decades of unanswered questions, the Arkansas State Police held a press conference that brought Alma's long nightmare to a close, at least officially. Authorities confirmed what the DNA had already revealed. Billy Leon Lindsay, or Lynx, was the man responsible for Morgan Nick's disappearance. The confirmation relied on the genetic match from hair found in Lindsay's old pickup, a discovery that science had finally forced into the open. But justice in the courtroom sense would never be served. Lindsay had died in 2000, taking his secrets with him. There would be no trial, no cross-examination, no opportunity for Morgan's family to face the man who had haunted their lives. Instead, there was only the cold comfort of certainty, a case closed, but never truly finished. The state's decision carried profound weight. With the case officially attributed to Lindsay, the Morgan Nick case file, one of the most famous missing child cases in Arkansas history, was marked as solved. Yet the search for Morgan herself was not over. Police emphasized that finding her remains remained a top priority. For her mother, Colleen Nick, the verdict was bittersweet. She had answers, but not the one she longed for most: the chance to bring her daughter home. The reverberations stretched beyond a single family. In recognition of the case's impact and as a lasting tribute to Morgan, the state of Arkansas renamed its Amber Alert system. It would now be known as the Morgan Alert. The change wasn't just symbolic. It served as a stark reminder that behind every alert is a real child, a real family, and a community forever changed. But as the dust settled, new questions arose. How many other children had fallen victim to men like Lindsay? Could more have been done sooner? And what does closure mean when a child's voice remains unheard, her story unfinished? With the case finally declared solved, Alma, Arkansas could breathe, if only a little. For Morgan Nick's family, the relief was tangled with heartbreak. Years had passed, generations had grown, but the empty seat at the dinner table never vanished. The red pickup, once just a vehicle, had become a silent witness, a time capsule rolling through decades, holding the last traces of a lost child. The lessons of the Morgan Nick case reach far beyond the Arkansas border. For investigators, it became a sobering reminder that evidence never truly grows old. Advances in forensic science gave a voice to the silent years. A single strand of hair, preserved by chance, carried the weight of proof that no confession or alibi could refute. In an era when so many cold cases are left unresolved, Morgan's story stands as a testament. Persistence and technology can illuminate even the darkest corners of history. For parents, it was a painful call to vigilance. Morgan's disappearance shattered the illusion that small towns are immune to tragedy. Safety, once taken for granted, became something that required constant attention and community effort. The Morgan Alert system, named in her honor, ensures that if a child goes missing in Arkansas, an entire state mobilizes within moments. That change is Morgan's legacy, a hard-won shield for future generations. Yet some questions never truly fade. The whereabouts of Morgan herself remain unknown. For her mother and those who loved her, hope endures. A hope that one day she'll return home, or at least that her story will prevent another family from facing the same nightmare. In the end, the Morgan Nick case is more than a tragedy. It is a lesson about time, about memory, and about the stubborn light of truth. And as long as her story is told, Morgan's voice, though silent, will echo on, a warning and a call for compassion in a world still learning to protect its most vulnerable. The disappearance of Morgan Nick changed Alma, Arkansas, and the nation forever. On a summer night in 1995, a 6-year-old girl vanished while chasing fireflies, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a grieving family. For decades, hope battled heartbreak as investigators chased the ghostly image of a red pickup and sifted through countless leads. But when science caught up with the shadows, a single strand of hair inside an old truck brought long-awaited answers, naming a suspect, even if true justice would never come. The Morgan Nick case stands as a haunting reminder that evil can find its way into even the safest places, but also that persistence, science, and community can keep hope alive long after the trail grows cold. If this story moved you, don't let Morgan's voice be forgotten. Like, subscribe, and share to help keep the memory of the missing alive and to support families still searching for answers. Every share brings awareness. Every comment keeps the conversation going. You never know when a single voice could make the difference.